Okay, that's good. That's good for that one. It's probably good for that one too. All right, so greetings. This is sort of this is Kal Kat, the Calicaster, and Kal put the others. I'm gonna put it all together. This is not a behind-the-scenes thing of after-party kind of deal. There isn't really one. This is more of the Chimera series. This is more of a series of review things because it turns out that all of our review channels over the years, are totally Star Trek fans and everything. We've never reviewed the 13 Star Trek movies. So I'm going to start, and then I'm going to have Silly Kelly, and then I'm going to have, who do we have here? We have Silly Kelly and Clint Capo. We'll finish it. So I'm going to start with we're going to split it up into roughly, since I think we did do the Abrams movies, which come later, we can kind of look back on them too, I guess, a little. But we have done reviews of those. I'm going to start with Motion Picture, Star Trek the Motion Picture, and also the Robert Wise Director's Edition. So to start with the Star Trek the Motion Picture, in 1979, and then there was a director's cut later in 2002 for the DVD releases, which they changed some stuff, and then they made a Blu-ray release of it where they remastered it again, and in my opinion, didn't quite get it right. There's several other fansy things with the series that other fans have addressed on the ship design and all that, and the warp core, and it's kind of fun to kind of reference that too. In that, really, in the 1960s, when they did the show, 3 seasons of the show, from 66 to roughly 65, 66 to 69, they just figured with stuff like the bridge, the engine room, the crew, and all that, we have a set and we're going to improvise, and we don't really know. We don't expect anybody in the future to look this over like rabid fans would and go, yeah, all this stuff needs to work out, 79 episodes or so. And they didn't know what they were doing. They said, the reason the bridge has one turbo lift in the show is because they built a half set, like a half set, and they just had one door. That's really the only reason they couldn't build a circular bridge set. They could have, but they didn't have the budget. They said, okay, 3 rooms. There's a door behind one of them. They weren't looking for, is the bridge diagonal or horizontal? How does it fit in the ship, in the model? They didn't think about that. They just said, we have a set. We put them in the set. This is what we have. But they didn't think, wait a minute. The turbo lift to the neck of the ship would have to be, to the bridge part of the middle of the ship would have to be right dead center behind the captain. It almost would have to be in order for them to get where they're going. And if it's not dead center, then there's 2, and it would have to be one on either side of the captain, like they did with the later movies. So that is that explanation. The engine room is also an explanation. They called it warp drive. Originally called it space-time warp drive. Originally they were atomic piles, but then they changed it to lithium crystals, and atomic piles for the and atomic piles has got it kicked to it's impulse engines. I'm not realizing that impulse sounds really cool, but technically impulse would be slower than ion drives, and the ion drive episode where Scotty says, they use ion power, wouldn't be very fast. Currently, we have ion drives, and they're not very fast. So that's not very fast. That wouldn't be ancient technology. They didn't know. They just used words. And 10 years later, Lucas in Star Wars would famously use parsecs incorrectly as a unit of time, space, and measure to describe the Kessel Run as 14 parsecs. Should have said not parsecs. He should have just made up a word, but he did not. But that's Star Wars. And then they had to re-explain that as, time warps and things. No. But this is about Star Trek, not Star Wars. And so we have a unit where we're trying to build the story, right? Build up to Star Trek: The Motion Picture. That's what I'm doing. Yeah, as we discuss the movies, basically. So Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Well, originally what was going on in '73 and '74 after the show ended. They wanted to make a show called Star Trek Phase 2. They had the designers put together the thing. They were going to make the ship more updated. They were going to do a different thing with the engine room, because the original engine room was simply a matte painting with a wall. I've seen it, and there's like stuff on one wall that they can pull lights and things and press buttons, and there's a like an over catwalk quarter. That's not a fan film one, but yeah, very very similar fan film one. Yeah, so they did that. I've also seen the bridge, the actual bridge. Somebody brought in the bridge for a couple of tours and stuff on the bridge, the captain's chair and all that. I had a friend who built a captain's chair for the show. A friend's brother-in-law was putting together a bridge, and brother-in-law, yeah. And then they were going to make a show called Excalibur, which was based on the Excalibur starship, and they needed a bridge and a set and all that stuff. The renters thrashed the studio, and it never got made. But that chair got rescued to somewhere, I don't know, and ended up in fan film. But anyway, back to Phase 2. And Phase 2 was going to be this new Star Trek show. A bunch of the episodes ended up on Next Generation, especially in Season 2 when it was during the first writer's strike. First official writer's strike in modern times. That was in the 80s. That was a little later. But yeah, some episodes ended up in there. They originally had a new Vulcan and a new a Deltan lady, and they were going to do like the Deltan lady and her boyfriend. The boyfriend, not husband, boyfriend, is going to be in there, and she was going to be this horny alien exotic lady, the late Pierces Kambata. She's going to be in it, and there was going to be a Vulcan, and there was going to be another a security officer lady that was going to be in it. They started making the motion picture instead. They said, we're not going to do a show, we're going to do a movie. Because Star Wars had just come out, and they're like, and by '77, and they're like, we don't do a motion picture. So they got help from ILM to do the Industrial Light and Magic to do the Star. So there's a connection between Star Wars and Star Trek. They knew each other. They hung out. The Enterprise D was an ILM model as well. It's the Enterprise original one. The websites, I could go into the starship design and all that, but some of the websites are off about where things are on the ship. I'll go into that later at some point. I'll do a rundown of the Starship Enterprise. The refit Starship Enterprise and the original Starship Enterprise, it's like the ship of Odysseus, and they've changed everything over. The refit Starship Enterprise is supposed to be launched in 2271 or 72, somewhere around there. And suddenly it has a vertical warp core that goes way up in the air. It couldn't fit inside the ship, really. But in some of the scenes from the movie, you can see where the engine room starts. If you look closely at the shuttle bay during the ship pass scene, and then when Kirk and crew dock inside, the shuttle pod docks inside in engineering. So that's where engineering is. It's right in the middle, smack in the middle of the ship, just past the warp engines. So that thing that goes up in the vertical warp core should only be about 2 stories tall. It's stuck in there, inside the section of the ship. So that other thing with the impulse deck and the impulse thingy on the top, where they're saying it's the warp drive, that's the impulse drive. And the turbo lifts would be in the way. And it's impulse drive. And yeah, there's impulse drive stuff running down the neck and then into the, I've seen the whole thing. I've seen all the diagrams and plans. And actually, James Doohan, the late Mr. Scott, and I discussed it at a couple of conventions, where everything is on the ship, which was awesome back in the day. He said, yeah, that's not where the engineering's in the secondary hull, and it's not between the nacelles. That's where it would have to be, because the shuttle bay is right there, and then there's engineering right next to it. As you go further into the ship. No, it's got to be right there. That's got to be where it is. It can't be in the saucer section, in other words. It is in the saucer section in the Reliant. They stuck it up near the impulse deck in the Reliant. And that wouldn't have a vertical warp core either. And they didn't know. They were figuring, hey, no one's going to care. No one's going to know. Okay, Star Trek the Motion Picture. Finally we get to that. Okay, so I kind of did the ship thing, so I don't really need to later, right? Okay, the refit Enterprise has completely changed over. It has Commander Decker is going to be the captain, and he's sort of the Riker, early version of Riker. And his girlfriend is the bald lady. And the guy that played the Spock archetype guy, he wanted his character killed off. Even though that transporter thing accident that happens in the movie, they could have just beamed him back and reassembled him. It's a transporter. It reassembles you completely. They could have just fixed that. They didn't. And then they bring him up McCoy later. But yeah, the movie, and then he's fine. The guy just wanted to die. Well, Leonard Nimoy didn't want to do it originally, and then he decided, yeah, I should be in this. Came back. The late Leonard Nimoy. William Shatner's still alive, by the way. Anyway, so he agreed to be in it. They did this whole, the Kunta Kalafi, or the other thing, the mind thing. So they did the mind thing. It's kind of a little Dune-like, kind of with the mines and stuff. Kind of a little bit like Dune, but so was Star Wars. They had the spice mines in the Kessel Run. That's from Dune. Anyway, so this one had Spock and mind powers and stuff, and Deltans with mind powers. So they were like the Bene Gesserit witches that could mind powers. Later on, they remorphed the Deltans in Next Generation as the Betazed. Then made them the Betazoids. So I've talked to Marina Sirtis back in the day about that. As a fan at the conventions as well, the Betazoids. And Next Generation trivia, her accent on the show was a mixture of Greek and a little bit of Swahili, just to be weird. That's what it was. So I know. Just to be weird. That's what it was. It's Greek and Swahili. That's why I was up there. What is this other accent in there? European and Greek and something else. Swahili. It's odd. Anyway, so yeah, I have some other fine stuff in there. And also, Brent Spiner used to be able to do an excellent James Cagney. For God's sakes, Mary, they built this thing in Bedford Falls. There's an old bloopers reel that they did as a gag reel, TNG, first season. It's called Totally Naked. It's probably on YouTube somewhere. It's really old and crusty looking. So that's Next Generation. These are the movies. Okay, Star Trek the Motion Picture. The plot is there is a space entity headed for Sol system, headed to the Alpha Sol system. They didn't establish the Alpha and Beta quadrants until Next Generation, or the Delta quadrant, or the other one, Gamma quadrant. It wasn't until Next Generation. So it was just the quadrant, basically, at that point. They hadn't established all that stuff. So we're retconning it backward. They didn't establish it. Where Earth is, basically. This thing is headed for Earth. It's 82 AU in diameter, but in the director's cut, they cut off the 8, so it's 2 AU in diameter. That's still really big. It would destroy the solar system. So clearly, when the ship finally gets to the solar system, it's clearly lost all of its momentum and stuff that would kill everything. And it's smaller. It's only miles long instead of thousands of millions of miles long. It's just a few miles long, 80 miles. So it arrived, and the Enterprise has to stop it. But it's a ridiculous premise. But originally the premise was the God Machine from Phase 2. And originally it was going to be literally a godlike entity in there. And the godlike entity was going to do a bunch of stuff. And Kirk was going to defeat it by convincing it that it was the creator. That's kind of similar. Yes, it is. But that was the original premise. And they changed it to, no, it's a remake of The Changeling. It's Nomad, The Changeling. The first Changeling, as opposed to the Changelings on Deep Space Nine, Nomad. It was a remake of Nomad, that episode, The Changeling. It's a remake of that. So it was a sequel to Nomad. The Voyager probe, they revealed that at the end. Although that does make an interesting plot error in the story. Because why would the aliens not have scanned the Voyager probe to figure out what it was called? They wouldn't just see the outside of it and go, oh, V'ger, I can't read the writing, so I'm just going to call you V'ger. No, it would scan it, and it would be able to read its data and go oh, you're called Voyager. That didn't make any sense in the movie. The Scooby-Doo ending. Ooh. But yeah, Star Trek the Motion Picture. It's not a high energy, not a high exciting film. But of all of the movies from the Star Trek classic thing, it is the most Star Trek movie. The closest to actual, like, okay, this is a Star Trek movie. It has character development. It has Kirk versus the younger captain. It has the alien probe thing comes in, takes away Ilea, the girlfriend, so that she's not there anymore. It was clearly meant that, yeah, they changed things around. She was going to be a main character on the show. All this other stuff was going on, and they just went with it. They just said, yeah, they just went with it. I like how some of the designs ended up in later stuff. The Rob McCurry model ended up being used on Star Trek Discovery. They brought that model back and heavily modified it, but it was the same. It was very similar. And also used it in Best of Both Worlds, in the next gen finale. So Star Trek: The Motion Picture. They were going on this adventure, and go inside this space thing and find out what's going on. The original version of the movie, Spock tries to merge with the alien entity by going out on a spacewalk. They wanted to show the spacewalk. They had new spacesuit models they built go out there, and originally it was backward, and in the director's cut they played it the correct way. It's actually backward. The director didn't get to finish it. The print was just wet because they usually filmed back then, and he didn't get to finish it. So the movie that you saw in theaters wasn't completely done. So some of the effects were a little weird, like the saucer section scaling was wrong. You could see the back of the set when they go out for the spacewalk, that kind of stuff. But yeah, in terms of it going from a '60s TV show where they didn't even get the bridge right and the engineering right because they didn't have the money, to this ambitious movie, it was like a quantum leap. It was like that much better. It was amazing to us in the '70s. Although as a child, when it came out, I was 9, and I fell asleep as a child. But later on, video and then TV, I saw it again. And also took note that there were gags in there, visual gags. Even then, there's a Mickey Mouse technical drawing in engineering. There's a technical drawing. They scan the warp core unit thing, and it literally is a Mickey Mouse face with ears. And there's some other gags in there too. But there are some in Star Trek 2 as well. And I'm gonna do the first 4 movies right here. So Star Trek: The Motion Picture was the most Star Trek movie, and influenced a lot of other stuff. The score, the score, Jerry Goldsmith's score, inspired the Next Generation score. So yeah, isn't that cool? So yeah, I'm gonna do and now I'm gonna go on to Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. The Wrath of Khan, which is they stop the alien and they discover it was a birth, it's a new life form and all that. It inspired a lot of stuff, a lot of fan films, even my own fan films. The V'ger thing. Although in my fan film series, we never actually went and visited V'ger in the storybooks we did, but not so much in the fan films, because it was just a little too much. It's too similar to kind of what the Q are, but they're not related, and what the Borg are, but they're not really supposed to be related. The gag in the fan films was that that the V'ger simply visited the Borg and assimilated some of them. It's not the other way around. It's the V'ger met the Borg and the Cybertron Transformers, which came later. So it met them. That's all. In its journey across the universe, and it was more of a wormhole than a black hole. So yeah, which comes out later. So they solve everything, and Decker and Ilea merge with the Ilea probe robot merges with the robot and the human, and they learn humanity. They're not Q. They're not supposed to be Q. They're just like proto-preserver, proto-Iconians. But not really. They're just god aliens things. Yeah. So that was Star Trek: The Motion Picture. The most Star Trek movie. But yeah, that at times a little drags on a little. But yeah, Star Trek the movie. Let's go on to part 2. The Wrath of Khan, the most influential Star Trek movie ever. In all shows and mediums and media. We've been over that a couple of times with other movies. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. They didn't want to spend as much money on the second one. They got Nicholas Meyer, who did The Time Machine. They brought him back, and he's like, the Time Machine remake. and they brought him in, and he helped on the making it leisure by saying like, okay, here's how we're going to save money. Redo the bridge thing so the turbo lifts are in the right place, and the engineering room so that's in the right place. And we got all the sets standing from the last movie. So what we're going to do, there's a lot of props and physical models and things, and we're going to have to be a submarine battle. And we're going to find a villain that Kirk could have met with. The problem is that the other people that have tried to remake the Wrath of Khan in at least like another 5 of the movies, it's kind of the same similar plot. They've tried to remake it over and over again, including a Khan movie, which I was like, no, they wouldn't have met yet. But yes, we've been over that one. You can watch our Star Trek 13 review, like Mark's Cards and I. But yeah, in this version, we'll just go back to this version, and Ceti Eel Ear, Ceti Alpha 5, Ceti Alpha 6. It had actually been like 10 years since the original series to the new one. So the motion picture is only like 3 years later in terms of the timeline. But Star Trek The Wrath of Khan is over 10 years later. So it's now 2285, roughly. And in that one, it's been 16 years since Space Seed, the episode where Khan showed up. They decided we're gonna make Khan into sort of the Joker to Kirk's Batman, which is a little odd because he really wasn't. But Terline really wasn't. There wasn't really a character that was that. I would say Harry Mudd was more of that. Harry Mudd was there twice in 2 different episodes. But they didn't want to do a Harry Mudd one. They wanted to do a Khan one. Ricardo Montalban had really he got in an accident or injured somehow, and he couldn't do a lot of standing and fighting and stuff. So they're like, let's just put you on a bridge on another starship. We'll just redress the Enterprise bridge as this other ship, and they have a submarine battle. All you got to do is sit there in your chair the whole time. So well, okay, I will do that. He's also on Fantasy Island, by the way. Ricardo Montalban played Khan. It's really weird because he's Mexican. He's not Indian, but it's odd that's but they went for that anyway, and and it's odd that they did that choice because it was the 60s and we'll just do that. In it, Chekhov is supposed to be first officer on this other ship, the Reliant. There's Captain Terrell, the other ship. Chekhov and Terrell are captured while going to Ceti Alpha 5 and 6. You think sensors would have indicated they were on the wrong planet, and it was a Khan planet. You think they would have remembered that 15 years earlier, but they didn't. And, Ceti Alpha 5 have exploded and shifted the orbit of this planet, so you thought it was the other one. A little convoluted, but fine. We want Kirk to meet Khan again. Also, we threw in an interesting monkey wrench in the works story. So way back with the Space Hippies episode, there was going to be a Joanna McCoy in it. McCoy, but some people often confuse Carol Marcus for that. She's not. It goes back further. In Star Trek, the very first episode, Where No Man Has Gone Before, Kirk mentions the little lab technician girl that the lady he hung out with back in the day. And Meyer went back to the original Star Trek and he's like, that is Kirk's ex-wife. She shows up in my movie, Wrath of Khan. And it's Kirk's ex-wife and they have a son. Let's do that. So that's where that comes from. It's the lab technician lady. That's Carol Marcus. They got it a little wrong in the Abrams version because they didn't ask me. If you know. Okay, so Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and we had a, so we have, I should really be doing the trivia things at conventions, Star Trek trivia. I would love to do that. Here we have the whole, one of those conventions. We went to so many of those. That's probably where they got our ideas from. We probably just said them out loud and they just cribbed them. Why not? But yes, not going into that. So basically, it's Kirk versus Khan at the Reliant planet, the Matara Nebula. They made up a nebula. Matara Nebula, Matara sector. Planet Genesis also becomes a very recurring thing in Star Trek. Although Next Generation never actually went there, but Lower Decks did, with a different version of Genesis, the Carnal Planet, which they were just cribbing our fan films and making fun of them, which we're kind of okay with, but but that was different. Yeah, so they go to they want an out. Basically, Nimoy wanted his character to be killed. They wanted an out. It was the early 1982, when the movie was going to come out. And he wanted his character to die with a beautiful death scene. Nimoy said that day. Let's do it beautiful. So Nimoy Spock sacrifices himself, saving the ship, fixing the engines, and Khan's ship is going to blow up and take out Genesis with it. Carol Marcus and Kirk's son David are on the ship, and I'm sure you're familiar with the story, but there's the story. So there's a submarine battle. Kirk rescues his ex-wife and the son from the planet, and then Khan fights the ship. Well, they fight the ship first, then he rescues the kid and the son and Chekhov, and Tyrell kills himself because he's got the alien bug inside him. And then they go on from there and they do the thing. And, a very influential story, the Wrath of Khan, right? A submarine battle in space. Even though a nebula, when you get close to a nebula, wouldn't do that, but they've done that so many times in Star Trek. Yeah, if you're inside a nebula, you don't see it like there. Actually, the solar system is in a pocket nebula kind of thing. Figure that. And yeah, you can't tell that it's opaque. You can't tell that you're in a nebula. But yeah, solar prominent. Yeah, so yeah, but yes, there's the local group is kind of in a nebula. If you walked away from it, you'd see it. The stars around. But yeah, there's a yeah, Wrath of Khan. Khan destroys himself to try to take out the Enterprise. We're using the Genesis device. It creates a new planet out of the nebula. It turns into the Genesis solar system, thus hinting at an out. So when they put Spock's body on the planet, they can go rescue him later. 16 years later, so Spock was the commander of the Enterprise and Kirk was an admiral. So we're going from there. And yeah, most influential Star Trek movie. And ever since then, there have been either a villain story with a villain similar to Khan threatening a captain, or it's a natural disaster story. It's literally the same over and over and over again, which is kind of annoying. But I'm only doing the first 4 here, and then I'm going to let the other ones do the other ones. But yes, that's Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, which influenced a lot of other movies. Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. Yes, the fans discovered, okay, this movie did so well that we need to do a third one. And let's get Leonard Nimoy to direct it. He can come back and bring himself back on the planet. The planet regenerated him. They're going to go back to the planet. Originally, Star Trek III, The Search for Spock was going to have Romulans in it, flying a bird of prey. I've seen the model. I went to the place, it's not a model. I've seen it twice. Once from Star Trek IV, as the Star Trek IV model in the thing, the tour. They had a tour at the thing, the Monterey Bay Aquarium. Got to see the model. It was there. It was neat. Yeah, a bird prey model. But yeah, the model they've used over and over again, especially in Next Generation, as well as the Excelsior model from Star Trek III, also appeared over and over again in Next Generation. Because back then you could not do digital models. They were all models, all practical models. The Excelsior, the great experiment, the Excelsior, but all you gotta do is take a couple of nuts and bolts out of it and it can't run. That's not good. That's how the transwarp failed. That's what the transwarp failure was. It was that Scotty could sabotage it in 2 seconds. That's what the real transwarp failure was, just so you know. That's what it was. It didn't, yeah, that was Scotty. He did it. That's all that was. It wasn't later. It was during that movie. So basically, the Kirk and crew discovered through Sarek mind melding with Kirk. In his bizarre, his accent got even more clipped. He couldn't say repeat and augment. He said it repeat and augment. What the hell is he saying? But yes, that line is screwed up in Star Trek III. It came out in 1984. The Star Trek III, the Search for Spock. So they got to go back to Genesis planet and find Spock. Basically, that's the plot. the Grissom is there with David and Saavik. Saavik was introduced in Star Trek II as a half Romulan, half Vulcan hybrid. It's going to be in that. And they were going to do that story arc. They were going to do another story arc. And so David, Kirk's son, and Saavik are on the planet. But they changed from Romulans to Klingons, which made a little more sense, but then the other stuff kind of didn't because they changed it. These people are after Saavik originally, and they were Romulans. They were trying to get her. That would have made a little more sense. But no, they wanted it to be Klingons. And they wanted to cast the great Christopher Lloyd as a Klingon. Of course I'll do it. That's awesome. Later go on to be on Back to the Future. Yeah, Doc Brown. So some kind of ancestor descendant of Kal Kat. Anyway, so yeah, this is '84. It was the year before Back to the Future. But yeah, and I was 14. The movie came out. But yes, I remember Star Trek II as well in the theater. I was about 11 or 12, almost 12. And then in Star Trek IV, I was 14. So yeah, then you have a Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, and you have the crew going to save Spock, bring him back to Vulcan, and reunite his mind with his Katra, with his body that's been regenerated and is aging rapidly because the planet is aging. Just conveniently, he ages to the right age. They leave the planet, which is a little goofy, but okay, fine. It's a little goofy, but fine. As in terms of a fantasy story, it kind of inspired some other ones. The idea of it being a nature-nurture thing. There's the villain, the Klingon guy, is basically more of a nuisance. Even though he does kill David, the character of David, he is still just kind of a nuisance. He's not really a Khan. He's just sort of there. And there's the Klingons don't like Kirk after that. And so they carry on with their story, Star Trek. They put Spock's mind back in his body, and McCoy had his Katra the whole time. So, and they played with that a little bit later on in the show. Sarek and Next Generation, Spock and Next Generation, some of the other ones. That was that era, the early Berman era Star Trek movie. So. Yeah, they rescue Spock. It's the line where Uhura says, "This isn't reality. This isn't reality. It's fantasy. Now get in the closet." Tells the guy to get in the closet. Just gonna take the transporter and leave. So we have, so they steal the Enterprise and go fight Kruge at the planet. They destroy the Enterprise and it crashes. And some fan theories that they went back and got the ship. No, they didn't. It's funny, but no, they didn't. It's gone. The Kirk and crew have stolen the bird of prey at the end, and that was the end of the movie. They go to Vulcan and fix Spock. And there's also been fan film stories and theories and canonized by Rod Roddenberry recently in his fan series, Otoy fan series. Gene Roddenberry's son. Kind of canonized the idea that Saavik and regenerated Spock had a son. And he's in that scene where Kirk and Spock meet in the timeline, in the Cillian space. Because it's a little bit Cillian, too. Fun story, but fan film. I don't think he actually impregnated her, because that would have been a little weird. But they were going to go there in Star Trek IV. She was going to say she was pregnant. From later on, I guess. They didn't have to do that, but that seems like KS kind of stuff. And that's what they called fiction, shipping fiction back then. That's a little KS-y. So that's probably not what happened. Okay, then we go on to Star Trek IV, which actually was in the Bay Area over here. And Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, the most fun of the Star Trek movies. Yet another Star Trek movie. And it's where it's very Star Trek-like. The other ones aren't as much. But it's time travel. They do a time travel one, similar to some of the other classic ones. Classic ones where they went to the 60s. This time they go to the 80s. 1980s, because it's cheaper that way to film in San Francisco in the 80s. So in 1986, so they go to San Francisco. I meet Gillian Taylor and meet the other guy. They meet Nichols and some other people who are later referenced in On Location, and that's really weird and eerie. But if you consider that Silly Trek, our fan film started when Star Trek 4 came out, that makes perfect sense. They were just aware of us, and we were nearby. So, as teenagers, said they were just nearby, and we were going to conventions at that point. In fact, apparently, I had been to conventions before. The other ones, long before, there was one of the first the area San Francisco conventions in '73 was recorded by some of the fans, some of the Star Trek guys, and they were selling a copy of the DVD of the convention, and the '70s convention, and I watched it, and there is 2 of my siblings in it, so I figured I had to be in there somewhere because they wouldn't have gone without me. I would have been a little kid, really, really little. Yeah, I've been doing it since the '70s. And there they were. Like, oh my God, that's Yvonne. What? No. This Robert. No. Yes. I confirmed that with her. She said, were you at the Star Trek convention '73? She said, yeah, I was at that. Yeah, and you were there too. You were just really little. You remember? We went to all those things. We did that. Yeah. Before I left for up north. So she said that. She's passed away now, but she said that. But yeah, she was there. Definitely, that Star Trek convention. Robert also confirmed that. So yeah, we all went to that convention. Yeah, everybody went there. It was something to do. Yeah. So yeah, they were all there. But yes, that was around the same time they were making the Milpies Monster, and they were in that as well at the same time. So. Anyway, so yeah, there's a weird connection to our casting. They should have just put us in the San Francisco movie. They didn't put us in the San Francisco movie, although there is a weird connection with that too, because when they're making the Wrath of Khan, there was a lady named Cecilia who would later be at Evergreen College, would marks cards in Evergreen College, under our real names, of course, Brown and Yeager. And she was a student with us at Evergreen, and she said, "Oh yeah, I was in Star Trek 4. I was actually." Then I met the cast, and I have like a picture thing, but in the background. And there was this other lady that was there too that day, and there was a scene where she's standing there, and they're talking about Alameda and stuff, and I was in that scene. So that lady that recently died, that was in that scene. That was improvised. They pulled somebody off the street. Cecilia is in the background in that scene, and so was that lady. She was there. That girl from the Evergreen was in that scene. In Star Trek 4. She was in a Star Trek movie. It's like, wow. Oddly enough, we did not include her in Silly Trek when it was Starship Locations at that point in the 90s. I'm not sure why. She's kind of behind the scenes in it, but we didn't include her in the story. But she was in Star Trek 4. But yes. Whereas, what was it? One of the Abrams movies was in that one. But yes, not the Khan one. That sucked. Yeah. Or actually, no. Actually, yeah. Yeah. There's one scene in the Khan one. But yes, well, maybe we'll get to that. So here we have Star Trek 4: The Voyage Home. This space probe. I rambled on. The space probe is coming to Earth to find the whales, but the whales have gone extinct. So it's a nature thing. Nature God is destroying things. And we have to stop the thing from destroying the Earth. The Kirk and crew attempt time travel back to the 80s to get some humpback whales, bring to the future, even though it wouldn't work. The tank wouldn't hold them, the metal wouldn't hold them, the transpermanent aluminum wouldn't really hold them, but let's suspend disbelief. Why not? They have a Klingon bird of prey that the bridge got refit on Vulcan, apparently. It looked different. Apparently the Vulcans refitted it for them. Yes, but yes, the Klingon bridge. Interesting idea, the HMS Bounty, the ship. They go back, they get the whales, and they return to the future. And Nichols, they meet someone else from Evergreen. They meet Mr. Nichols, who's also in there. So that's just weird. It's just weird. Although Nichols, the guy from Evergreen, was technically his like cousin. They had the same last name, but so there's 2 people from Evergreen, Star Trek 4, a couple of years earlier. But yes, I didn't know them until later, though. But yes, it's the connections. And also, yeah, they return to Earth with the whales and they tell the probe what to do with itself, and it flies away. Essentially, a very good, fun movie. Most fun of the Star Trek movies, most popular, because it was fun. They never really rekindled that type of story. They kind of tried a couple of times. They never really came back to that kind of story. The other movies, what amounts to the Genesis trilogy and the motion picture, is definitely a unique story arc. I mentioned the Genesis thing in there too, and the Klingon. There will be no peace until Kirk lives. No, there will be no peace as long as Kirk lives. A lot of great lines. The whales, that kind of thing. And I don't need to go into all the minutia of all the movies. This one didn't have as much where you could find like Klingon modification glyph was mentioned in Discovery. That was asked. Of course. Anyway, we get to see the modification glyph. I think the word was supposed to be mummification glyph and not modification, but Nimoy said it a little weird. It was mummification glyph. It's a mummy thing. Mummy ship, yeah. Like an arc thing. That's what it's supposed to be. Was there anything else goofy in there? Well, the 9 mils a little goofy. In the silly track parodies at the time, Spock said, yeah, Spock and Kirk was big back then as well. Also, before going on to the next movie, and on to, I believe, Silly Kelly. We'll do the next 4 movies. Before we do that, let it be known that they started on a new TV show. The movies were popular at that point. That we're going to make a new show, and we're going to call it Star Trek: The Next Generation, which began production, which is awesome, in '86, to come out in October of 1987. And Star Trek: The Next Generation. And, Red Letter Media already did a bang-up job with Next Generation. I don't know if we want to review that or not, like as much as they did. We can't show clips like they can, so that's screwy. So we won't. We're just doing movie reviews. That's why there's no clips in the background. We can't show clips. But yeah, Star Trek 4 and the Next Generation. Next Generation would be another 18 years of stories on the air at that point. And it doesn't matter what the fan films were doing at that point. Curiosity was the beginning of the fan films at that point. Yeah, so we thought of a lot of stuff that kind of put on Next Generation later on. We thought of cybernetic creatures that would invade the ship and make them into zombies before the board. We thought of a plague ship several times going on the ship and messing with them on the board. We thought of a guy reaches into his backpack, Mark's cards, tosses an apple up and down and chomps on it. It's a little later than Pine Hill. That would be the early 90s, but it was on Next Generation within a week. And then it was in other Star Trek movies within weeks and years as well. But a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, we connected the V'ger with the Borg before the Borg was even introduced. We did a bunch of stuff. Some other fan did the guy caught in the transporter. That wasn't us. To survive. Wasn't us. Transporter psychosis. That was us. But yeah, because the convention started. We were back at the conventions as teenagers. Meeting the early TNG people, meeting that kind of thing. So yeah. And Patrick Stewart is not 5'10", as IMDb is not correct. I am 5'10" in my socks. I met him at a convention in, I believe, 88 or so. Our Next Generation was brand new. 88 or maybe early 89, one of the conventions. And he went up to about, same as Mark's cards. About the same height as Mark's cards. 5'6". 5'6", roughly. He's not 5'10". He's not. And there's Jonathan Frakes. He was quite a bit taller. And Leonard Nimoy was pretty tall. Shatner's about my height. So. And as a teenager, we met Nimoy and Shatner at that same time period. So, and I said, Bill, Schechter. Duh. And he said, I don't do that, boy. I don't talk like that. I said, yes, yes, Bill. Yes, you do. He's like, oh, yes. That's very funny. Yes, he does. Especially in the later movies. He thought to enunciate every other word. But yes. We were just everywhere. And anywhere all at once. They later made a movie about that. So yeah, that's a kind of pseudo roundabout review of 4 of the Star Trek movies. Enjoy. Yeah. Then we'll go on and review. Yeah, it makes sense to kind of split these up, review movies, and not make it all one long thing. Because that'd be, yeah. So I review. So this is just a review of Star Trek the Motion Picture through Star Trek 4. And then hand it over to him do the next one. It's sort of a review and behind the scenes thing. They were all fun, the first 4. Yeah, so there's only slight additions to the director's cut, kind of hinting at where Savick went in the longer edition. But they never say pregnant. They just fans are obsessed with that idea ever since the Robotech here in 1985, with the misremembered scene with the kiss at the end of Robotech. They weren't having sex; they just kissed. There wasn't sex going on, but we were teenagers and we didn't know that's the prelude to it. But so even the fans were like, "Oh, they must have done something behind the scenes, like they're lovers," because chaos. But no, they didn't never said they were lovers. So no, Spock never got with Savick. I mean, they never said that they were dating. Even they implied Spock had a wedding later on, but that was maybe he ended up with her hundreds of years. Maybe it was Valeris from Star Trek 6. It was probably Savick, though. But yeah, and Robin Curtis, Kirstie Alley. Kirstie Alley played her in the first one, and then in Wrath of Khan, and then Robin Curtis took over, played her in the other movies. Yeah. And then by part 6, they're like, we don't want... Yeah, Roddenberry, one of his last directions was, don't have that be Savick, have that be someone else. Because she wouldn't betray Spock. But yeah, but that was Star Trek 6. And that's yeah. So that's it for the movie review right now. And jump around. And yeah. Do you have Star Trek 5? Why? Why do you have it? Yes. Synergy. Silly Kelly. Yes. Star Trek 5. Let's just go into that immediately. Like, but yeah, the Star Trek movie reviews. Yeah, because we didn't do the movies. It's a tad over this way. Just to look right into the camera. So yeah, ladies. So we have. Or you could do like those new shows and have it like be way over here for no reason. Yeah. Even though they're trying to put central voice on central framing on the hero, but you always screw that up somehow. Star Trek 5. Yes, let's just go to the movies, because the minutia is, the Silly Trek was going on, and we had Silly Trek fan films that were made, like, around the same time, and also in the trades, and Starlog magazine, and that kind of thing. But the big Starlog magazine was big. It was the biggest Fangoria, and Gorzo. They were big magazine. I think Fangoria was done by the Starlog people. It was the same group. They had magazines back then. And fanzines and zines and things, conventions, all kind of stuff. I don't know necessarily if we just thought of the same idea as Harlan Ellison thought of the Terminator of a sort before the Terminator, So we thought of something similar. And then Harlan Ellison, of course, made then of course James Cameron made the Terminator movies, and ever since then they've been copying that. So. yeah, cyborg, yeah, cyborg monsters. I don't know if that's all that something we thought of, other than we just came up with the same idea. I'd like to think we did, though. Somehow they went to Pine Hill and asked the teachers what our kids were talking about. Unlikely, though, because in the 80s, teachers never asked us what we were talking about. Yeah, that's why. This is coming back. This denim thing. The kids these days are going back to denim. So I brought it back. That thing. And it was like, there was a kid, a girl. Her friends were doing the denim thing, and the pants, the whole long pants. I didn't do the long pants, and I was like, well, they're bringing it back, something from 35 years ago. That denim stuff's coming back. They didn't want to hear that. That they didn't think it was a new thing. It's like, it isn't new. It's a generation or a little over a generation old. But it's awesome that it's back, and now I'm gonna, Anyway, so here we have Star Trek V, the Final Frontier, because they couldn't come up with a title, so they just cribbed it from the opening crawl, Space: The Final Frontier. Let's just call it that. They let Shatner direct it. Now, when we did GalaxyCon 2 years ago, and they did the Next Gen GalaxyCon with Kirk as well, and Deep Space Nine people, and all, it was, yes, Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, and Next Gen, and Kirk, and they were all there, and it was like there was a showing of Star Trek V, and Shatner was hosting it, but we didn't stay for that, regrettably. Although since then somebody recorded it, so see what he said. But it's funny. But we're not reviewing that. Instead, reviewing Star Trek V. Now, the original premise for Star Trek V was going to be the same premise as the God Machine. They just took the script. Kirk's going to go fight God. Blow a hole in the universe. And God's going to be there and he's going to fight him. And the people at the table, the Reg Room, said, it's not big enough. Yes. And then Harv Bennett and Rick Berman were all, well, let's do something called Starfleet Academy instead. Let's do Starfleet Academy. Let's go back to the origin story of Star Trek. They've been wanting to do that for years. That's nothing new. Not saying they should do it now. They really, really shouldn't, because they've already done it a few times. What is Strange New Worlds if not the origin of Star Trek again? What is Discovery if not the origin again? You gotta stop with the origin story. Nobody wants to see that. Do a new Star Trek story somewhere else. Star Trek V was trying to be unique. Okay, we won't go to the galactic barrier this time. We'll go to the center of the galaxy. And just for comic relief purposes, we'll make the Enterprise a piece of junk. The Enterprise A was given to them at the end of Star Trek IV instead of the Excelsior, but apparently it had a lot of issues. Scotty's got to fix it. There was this weird backstory of him with Uhura, which made no sense. There were decisions in this that made no sense. There was Catons from Larry Niven going back to the animated series, which referenced the Catons and the Kinzinti as well, which is very cool. So the cat people are in it. The cat lady gets thrown into the weird pool water thing. David Warner is in it, and he's later a Klingon in another one, and he's later a Klingon in another one. And he's an alien in his Next Generation as well. It was 1989, so it was 5 years into Next Generation, and by then they had done pretty much all the stuff we did, and then some with their show, 5 years into the Next Generation. And yeah, they were copying us just about every other week. I don't know how, but they were. And but it was good. A new show, bald Captain Picard, and very diplomatic, not like Kirk. And we had Riker, who was the Studley guy to go down to the planet. And we had all this other bigger ship, the Enterprise D and all that. But this isn't a review of Next Generation because Red Letter Media already did Next Generation. This is a review of Star Trek V. They go to the galactic. They go to the center of the galaxy. Well, first of all, they go to the planet of galactic peace. They go to Nimbus 3. And at the time, a person my age, Lisa Beth Shatner, had written a book with Bill Shatner as one of his daughters, who has a cameo in the movie as the ensign. He pats her on the back as she walks away. That's his daughter. So nothing happened between them. Yes, that's his daughter. That would be weird. That'd be like the Ozarks. Bill Shatner allowed to direct a Star Trek movie, and then never again after this one. But yes, Bill. They wanted to do a bunch of gags and things. There's a gag reel, bloopers reel thing that was made with it of the going up the turbolift shaft thing, and they have somebody hitting one of those old fashioned carnival like bonker thing to make the the bell the ball weight go up and hit the bell. They did that with the turbolift shaft cutscene. They also had the scene where Scotty bonks his head was actually real. They left it in the movie. James Doohan bonked his head during the movie. They left it in. There were errors that were really obvious in this movie that even we noticed at the time, and we're like, the only thing that was weird was not only this movie but this other one where we had an ex-teacher who showed up and was like, thought we fired it. He got him fired. Which we didn't know what he was talking about. It was Star Trek 5. But yes, didn't know about that. So we have by then Star Trek 5 had come out in senior year of high school. So yeah, we were on our way out. Or I was. Mark's Cards was further along, or further to go. He was a freshman. So at the Silver Creek, 1989. By then, the new show was established. It had 5 seasons. It was going to go on for 7 seasons. They were even planning a new show that would be eventually called Deep Space Nine, another later on called Voyager. So the shows were going. So the year, the odyssey of the return of the movies and the shows continues. So Kirk and crew get the Enterprise and they race off to Nimbus 3 and the planet of galactic peace, which is a joke in the story. And they find a religious zealot named Cybok, who is Spock's brother, who he didn't really have. This religious zealot then takes over the Enterprise. 400 crewmen or so takes over the Enterprise with his followers. Doesn't make any sense, and swoons most of the crew to following him. That's really doesn't make any sense, but that's what Kirk wanted to do. The only thing that works in this movie is the camaraderie, though. Even the opening scene with Kirk climbing the mountain, El Capitan. I've never actually been to Yosemite, but they built a prop mountain and had him climb up the prop. He's clearly on a soundstage prop. That's how they filmed that. He's not actually climbing anything. When Spock comes up, he's on wires. He's like floating in the air. But yeah, obviously he didn't have real rocket boots. There were a lot of issues. So they go to, Cybok wants to find Shakari, the planet of space god. They're going to go to Shakari. It's a planet in the center of the galaxy. There's a barrier they can't get through, and they got to go through the barrier. The Klingons follow them. Captain Claw follows them. Sort of the ineffectual Star Trek 3 Klingons. So you have a Khan figure, who is Cybok, who actually takes over the ship running around. So it's a little bit like Wrath of Khan. You have a Khan figure. And you have a Klingon sort of guy running around doing his thing. That's the B story for a lot of those episodes of TNG. And you got them trying to escape him. And then you got their whole thing. And at one point, they get out of prison. They're imprisoned on the ship. And they go up the turbolift shaft. And this is a fan discontention. There's no way that they would label, not only to label the empty turbo shaft 3, whatever that is, no way would they label numbers going up inside it so you could tell what's going on. It wouldn't be that tall. They get up to the top of the turbo shaft and it's 74 decks up. It would be down because the bridge would be deck 1. It would be down, so they would go down. And the only place it could be was in the saucer section. It's about 12 decks. So yes, all the fans freaking out about that. And James Doohan just at a convention at the time was like, I don't know, they didn't ask me. Which is a funny reply. Yes. That was stupid that they did that. Yeah, I didn't actually watch that part. I guess he didn't. So yeah, they go to Shakari, the planet. Turns out it's not a god; it's an alien creature. And the Spock goes over to the Klingon ship because there's a Klingon General Kruge and there's a Klingon guy there, convincing the younger Klingon Claw to surrender, so he can take command of the Klingon bird of prey and shoot the space god with a torpedo and escape. There was going to be a rock creature fight scene that they couldn't film, but now with modern fan technology, some fans have, especially during the Trek Core era, about 20 years later, made the rock creature scene. There's some fan ones that it's the rock creature scene. But the trouble is it would be CGI and it wouldn't look like the movie. It's so much better than the movie that it doesn't, it's cool, but it doesn't work. Because it's not Star Trek 5. Fans have made a version of that using that guy's footage. Which, not me, you know. Yeah, so you've got Star Trek 5 and it has a lot of issues. But the camaraderie was fine. The Kirk, Spock, McCoy camaraderie is fine. It's playful. That was good. And for that, it's fine. It's a perfectly salvageable movie. It is the worst Star Trek movie in the Kirk era. It's not the worst Next Generation movie. No, it is not. Let me not get to all those. I'm only going to go up to movie 8. And I won't get to the worst Next Generation movie, actually. Get to part 8. Part 8. It's not the Next Generation. So that was Star Trek 5. Yeah, done in 89. And then we're on to Evergreen and On Location and Starship Locations, the beginning of Starship Locations, and meeting Cecilia Nunez and all those other people. So in the scene that Kal Kat mentioned, where there's the girl who points them to Alameda, there's a teenager standing off to the side, because they were only a few years younger than Cecilia, just like maybe 1.5 years younger. So like it would have been the teenager standing next to her in that scene. Yeah, off to the side, kind of looking around, kind of chunky. Looking around. That's Cecilia. Anyway, so yeah, so we have. I have no idea what happened. She later appeared at some of the conventions, though, including the hilarious Brent Spiner one. Well, some crazy lady asked about getting a hold of Jean-Luc Spooge, apparently. But that was some weird lady that, well, don't know what's going on there. But that was later. Not much later, though, like 91 or so. Anyway, so then we run on to 1994, which is when Starship Locations temporarily was on hiatus. And we go on to San Jose State. There wasn't much Starship Locations at San Jose State. Just that one season, 96 and 97 was one season we did some stuff. Included the characters. And then a little later. Yeah. So by the time that by the time Star Trek, we're going to go on to Star Trek 6. It's 1991, Star Trek 6. During on Starship Locations as well. They were still cribbing our stuff. Star Trek 6, they brought back Nicholas Meyer. And Nicholas Meyer was a producer on part 4. So all the even-numbered movies kind of work. And for Star Trek 6, I believe they had him directing Star Trek 6. And they had a couple other writers from the other cast in there. So of course it's going to be a little bit like Silly Track. But Star Trek 5 was a lot like Silly Track. It was a lot like watching a Silly Track episode and our fan films and stuff. We won't go into the fan films because I've already done that. This is the Star Trek. So we have there we are. Yeah. We have Star Trek 6. Oh, it's supposed to be a political thriller, and Nicholas Meyer wanting to save editing after Part 9 came out in 89. Part 5 came out in 89. Part 6 is going to come out in Christmas 1991, right around Christmas time. Well, I think it came out in November, but yeah, in 89, in 91, only 2 years later. Rush out another Star Trek movie and just get it done because they're going to use a lot of the Next Generation sets. They're already there. Just redress them, make them look weird and which really made the engineering room not look like the proper engineering room. It was the Next Generation engine, and they painted it differently. It was like, that didn't work. But sure, why not? Yeah, so transport was different. That one, we have Klingon Chancellor Gorkon, and it was an allegory for the Cold War ending. Cold War was ending in 91, 92, and late 90. Tear down the wall, Cold War with Russia. So the Klingons were made more Russian in this one than even on Next Generation, when they were more like Vikings, like Asian space Vikings, and the Russians. It's Klingon Russians. So these Klingon Russian guys, Chang and all the other ones, they named him Chang, which was funny. The Klingon Russian guys, it's odd. No, but that was what they called him. It was Christopher Plummer and a bunch of other people. Christopher Plummer has a later connection to Star Trek Picard. His daughter is in Star Trek Picard playing the Elysian bad guy, the Romulan Elysian bad guy shapeshifter, who was clearly a Cillian from our series. Yeah, that's where they got that idea from. But yes, I digress. Back to Star Trek 6. Roddenberry was ailing and passed away in 91. But he did get to say, okay, this is what I want in Star Trek 6. Don't make that betrayer of Valeris. Don't make her Saavik. Make her Valeris. Make her somebody else. Different lady. Because, Saavik wouldn't do that. Yeah, that was probably a good thing. And they were also working on a new show called Deep Space Nine at the time. And they were going to, do other things in there and copy some more of Starship Locations people. But that would be different. Not as much over there at Deep Space Nine. But Voyager, they were back to doing that. So it was in 95. Star Trek 6 was an espionage thriller. These two assassins in Starfleet uniforms sneak aboard Gorkon's ship. Gorkon's a Klingon leader, Chancellor. Kill him. This leads to Kirk and McCoy being arrested for the crime and sent to the Gulag Rurapente, the Klingon alien graveyard. Chekhov's says, guess who's coming to dinner? There's a lot of Shakespeare references, a lot of references to Nixon go to China, there's a lot of other things. That part of it makes the movie a little weird and extremely dated when you watch it. You'll go like, wait a minute, why do they keep... Really? Shakespeare? Really? I get it, I'm a Shakespeare guy, an English guy. San Jose State, class of 98, English and journalism. English in 98 and 2008, journalism. But English, Shakespeare, that kind of thing. Creative writing, script writing as well, yes. You gotta learn how to script write if you're gonna be a script writer. And you're gonna make fan films and novels. Learn how to write and learn how to type. I said learn how to type first. Don't use the AI, it doesn't work very well. Don't use that, you'll be able to tell. So here we have this espionage thriller. They're going to be rescued from Rurapente planet. Of course, Spock and crew figure out how to rescue them. Planet. Last minute, there's like an assassin thing that wants to get them killed off. There's a Romulan who is a spy who is clearly one of the bad guys. There's not as much it's more like an espionage thing. There's a Klingon ship that can fire when cloaked, which they then turn on its head in the next movie. There is a Khan type bad guy threatening the Enterprise for the last 40 minutes or so. General Chang is threatening. There's a space battle. They blow up the Klingon ship at the end, and they use it in 3 different movies afterward. Yeah, they used the actual model exploding like different times. Embarrassingly, in the 7th movie, they use the same shot. But in other ones, they sort of sneak it in other shows. But embarrassingly in parts. So here we have, Next Generation coming to an end with Star Trek 6. All is well, they blow up Chang's ship by figuring out it has an exhaust port. The tailpipe is going to be shooting out plasma energy out of its butt. They can just shoot at it. The universal translator joke, it doesn't make sense. But, so what? a clever homing torpedo idea, a clever idea, a lot of clever ideas. It's still a submarine battle. The Excelsior is in it. Captain Sulu of Excelsior is in it. Finally, is a ship. They've rebuilt the transwarp engine, so now they work. And and he goes to help them at the end. Star Trek 6 is a fine movie. It just has a few weird quirks in it, and a funny scene from behind the scenes of Star Trek 6. You can see it on the Blu-ray and the director's cut is mentioned as well. That food was in the dinner scene was sitting out there for a long time, and they were daring each other to touch it, and apparently Shatner decided that he would try some, and he did, and he regretted it. Some of the blue squid was apparently, and this was referenced at a convention, and then referenced in Star Crackers. And that's the tossing apple scene is also referenced in Star Crackers. Mark Scards does the tossing apple scene, and it appeared on Next Generation like within a week. That was in the same time period, and so that and the blue squid was mentioned at the convention. And what happened is Shatner ate the squid. Immediately, within an hour, got really, really sick. And was like, oh, no. They're all, damn it, Bill, why did you try the squid? Stop that. You're going to have stomach cramps and be sick. Yes, so don't have the blue squid. No. But yes, that's one of the stories from Star Trek 6. Yeah, so they defeat the bad guys, go to this planet. They're going to go to Kittimer, the planet they're going to go to, and have. There's another assassination attempt in progress, and there was a guy that we're going to cast in Deep Space Nine in the assassination attempt scene that all of the scenes filmed, called Rene Augerbenoit from The Little Mermaid. He was going to be in it, and they cast him as Odo on Deep Space Nine, so he was one of the bad guys. And there was the weird Scooby-Doo scene that had been in there, in the longer version of there's a director's cut. I watch that, see that. Oh, they took the Scooby-Doo scene. This is not Klingon blood. Took off his mask. It's Colonel West. Yes, this is not Klingon blood. It was supposed to be Colonel West from the Operation Reprieve thing earlier. So there's a lot of fun stuff behind the scenes on that one. And we were kind of, but yes, more on Next Generation then. And at that point, there'd been some other cameos by other Star Trek people. And Next Generation as well. McCoy showed up, Spock showed up, Sarek showed up, a bunch of people. But yeah, never Kirk. Although in our fan films, in Silly Trek, in 1987 and 88, we had 88 basically, 87, 88, 87 and 88, and then later retconned as 88, just to be more realistic about it. We had the Enterprise A meeting the Enterprise D a couple of times because Mark Scards didn't know the shows weren't connected by literally the same amount of years. He didn't know there was 78 years between the two. He wasn't paying attention. So we just had them meet. Later versions of the story, we had to say, oh, it was a time warp, and Q was involved. And when Q was involved, he took the Cillians, and that episode of TNG where Riker was given Q gave powers to everybody, and they all rejected them. Well, Q returned in 1988 to Pine Hill and gave us Q powers. But we took them and became the Cillians, and the Cillian universe happened. So, there you go. That question is that who is Nustifer in the new finale there. We'll be into that later, but it was one of our villains. We'll reveal that later. It's not in here. Not here. The next movie was Star Trek Generations. Brought the Next Generation with a little bit of Deep Space Nine uniforms thrown in. To the period, we got to see Data get his motion chip. We got to see him say, oh shit, and can crash the ship. Troy crashes the ship. She can't drive. She should never be allowed to fly the ship. And they do the Lursa and Bator play the con part, like in the last movie, with Chang playing the con part. And it's another con one. But that was Nicholas Meyer. This is just somebody ripping it off. David Carson, I think. Yes, so directing that one. David. It was David. I think so. But yeah, so we have generations. We have a bad guy named Soren who is also a Khan archetype. So we've got two Khans in there. Soren is an Elorian from Kirk's time in 2294 when they launched the Enterprise B, and Kirk is allegedly killed when the ship confronts the Nexus ribbon to rescue the Elorians. They're the alien things and Guinans there, Yoga Guinan, and they go there. Guinans from Next Generation, and they go there, and they got to rescue. And Kirk goes down to deflector control to try and fix everything, and he's sucked out into the Nexus, and they think he's gone. He's gone, sucked out into space. Now, originally in Generations, they wanted to get Nimoy and McCoy, and DeForest Kelly, to come back, and they didn't want to do it. So all those scenes where Chekhov is suddenly a nurse, it's supposed to be McCoy, and Scotty is acting like Spock, it's supposed to be Spock in those scenes. That's why that part doesn't make sense. And Kirk has this weird ranch down on the planet in the Nexus, and the fans always thought and debated on that movie, going you know what, Kirk wouldn't do that. He wouldn't have a farmhouse in his ultimate fantasy of the Nexus. Why would he do that? No, he'd be on the bridge of a ship saving the galaxy. Yeah. Picard wouldn't be, though. He'd probably have a ranch. Yeah. So we have this, Star Trek Generations had some issues, including the finale scene, including the fight between Lishra and B'Etor playing the con role, attacking the ship with their one bird of prey because they got a hold of Geordi. Soren stole him for a while, and he used his visor to hack into the Enterprise computer thing. I've been in the engineering room set, and I've been to the bridge a couple of times. The bridge, the Next Generation bridge. They had the Star Trek experience, and they rebuilt some of the stuff at some of the conventions later on. And there's a bunch of goofy stuff on the wall in that big Master Systems display. It's weird that they have a Master's NDS. Like, when you have an enemy ship attacking, you should turn that off so they can't see where your ship systems are operating or not. They should turn that off. That's a bad idea. I mean, it looks cool, but it's a bad idea if you have an enemy attack. Turn that off so they can't see what the ship is doing. But yes, so yeah, that would prevent Geordi from doing what he's doing in the movie. So they have this display, and up on the display, there's all this weird stuff on the ship. There's a Jupiter 2 parked in the shuttle bay. There's a Gilligan's boat is down in Cetacean Hops. There's weird Man from U.N.C.L.E. stuff and some other stuff in there on the display. It's funny, a bunch of weird stuff. Oh yeah, and Brian Story from the cast had been on the bridges on the engine room thing as well, and he said not only that, but the in the warp core there's junk. There's food garbage in there, like donut, half-eaten donut, coffee cups and stuff, McDonald's wrappers, stuff, which we referenced in the last other movie, McDonald's wrappers. So yes, it's powering the warp core. It's Mr. Fusion. Who knew? The lithium crystals. We don't usually name them, Captain. Well, the reason they called them dilithium after calling them lithium crystals is back in the day is somebody pointed it out that lithium is a real thing and that you can't do that with it. So they just make it sound more futuristic. Dilithium. Yeah. That's all. That's all it was. That's what it was. Anyway, so yeah. Generations. They go to this planet. Tully Soren wants to get back to that Nexus I was talking about. He wants to get back to the Nexus. He's going to blow up a star. Blowing up a star is ridiculous. When they do it in movies, it's you cannot blow up a star with an object. They're going to do that in that new Andy Weir movie, the Hail Mary pass. Going to try to blow up the sun or damage the sun. It's no, you cannot build a device that damages a star. You just can't. Don't do that in your science fiction movies. That's stupid. But anyway, they did it in this one, and there's Picard and Soren are sucked into the Nexus. Strangely enough, Soren is sucked into the Nexus too, but he doesn't encounter him there. Or yes, he does later on. That's right. And then there's a bridge fight scene. You wouldn't think he would be there though. You think he'd go somewhere else. He goes on fantasy. Yeah, weird. Anyway, they're sucked into the Nexus when he blows up the star. So it's going to be time travel and it's going to be timey-wimey stuff. As Mark's Cards pointed out, watching the movie years later, instead of them going with where they went, go back to the beginning of the movie and arrest the bad guy. Because you can. and then the Enterprise D would be saved. They didn't think to do that in the movie. I guess because they wanted to destroy the model. And they did destroy it. There was a big thing on the set, Paramount. They did that model scene. The former tank, the big tank, Paramount. There was a tank, and that's where they filmed the whale, the Kirk swimming with the whales and the bird of prey, the giant model. I don't know what happened to that giant wall they built from the ship. I don't know what they did with it. but they had the thing in the tank in there and all. And that parking lot had since been emptied out. And it was a parking lot again. So for generations they redid it as a large diorama. Huge, massive diorama. They built a 4-foot saucer section model. ILM helped them again. And a little bit of the post. And they built this big model, saucer section. They're going to crash it. They lowered it down onto the thing and had it crash through all the trees and shrubs and stuff. And when you see the footage, you're like, why is the greens of the trees and the forest and foliage so bright? Well, that's because the cameras back then would dull the colors. And it didn't look right if the colors were duller. So they had to make them brighter so that they would show up correctly. So, filming trick from a set of Star Trek Generations for you. They crashed the saucer section. And the Otoy people, Rod Roddenberry Jr., archive thing, rescues the Enterprise saucer section in the fan film. With Nimoy Spock showing up. No, it's a CGI Spock. Like it was for the Kirk one, with the other dyed Spock. Yeah, so Otoy, go watch those guys. They're cool. The Roddenberry archive guys. But yes, yeah, so we met Roddenberry. Yeah, I met him at a convention. He had a 3-legged dog in the 80s. I wonder if he remembers this. He had a 3-legged dog. Yeah. Yeah. Kind of a brownish, tannish, golden dog. But yes, yeah, the 80s and the 90s. Wow, it was a wild, wild time. I think Deep Space Nine started 93. Wild time, yeah. Roddenberry wouldn't have liked Deep Space Nine. He would have been, it's too dark. Yeah, we don't want to make the allegory literal, like it's Cardassian or the Nazis and Bajor or the Israelites. We don't want to do that for real. The Vulcans were already kind of the Israelites, so kind of didn't want to, yeah. But they did. Yeah, Generations, Generations. All right, so I'm going to come up to the next movie and then do First Contact. Star Trek First Contact stole its name from an episode of Next Generation. Star Trek First Contact was directed by Jonathan Frakes. So was Insurrection later on. It was an episode with time travel, similar to The Voyage Home. But this time they went back to the origin, yet another origin story, of the founding of the Federation. Of the first flight of the Federation ship, Phoenix, actually. And they're going to go visit the Phoenix rocket. They're going to go back to the first warp test of Zefram Cochrane. They got the guy from Babe the Pig to be in it, as Zefram Cochrane. Didn't look the part at all, but they got him. A little too old, but he didn't look the part. Because the original Zefram Cochrane looked like an Air Force pilot from the 60s. Yeah. Didn't look anything like that guy. Anyway, but that's fine. Basically what happens at the beginning of the story is there's a new Enterprise. It's 2370... 2373, roughly? Yeah, I think that's 2373. So it's a couple of years after the last movie, after Generations, and it's it came out in 1996 for the 30th anniversary. So this is right when Starship Locations took off again. Same time, so they knew all about us, our fan films. They knew about our hilarious fan film story parody, where it wasn't First Contact. This is after the movie came out, of course. It wasn't First Contact with them, it was First Contact with us at Pine Hill. And the Enterprise E goes back in time to prevent the Borg from assimilating Pine Hill. because then the Enterprise D and the Enterprise A show up at Pine Hill as well from the past, and they need to stop the Borg from killing those two ships and killing them in the future, and then they can come back. Of course, it's about Pine Hill. Kill us getting her. No, it wasn't. The movie was about the Borg trying to go back to Earth and assimilate Earth by going to the past. So the Borg Queen shows up at Earth, and there's a Borg fight. The Defiant shows up with Worf, a tough little ship, and he's going to ram into the Borg ship, but the Enterprise E rushes in to save everybody. But then the Borg Queen uses the Borg sphere. The cube blows up, the Borg sphere comes out. To come back in time. Enterprise E follows them back in time to 2063 in April. And meet up with Zefram Cochrane and Lily Sloan and the crew. The Borg have started to assimilate the Enterprise E, though, and they're kind of screwed. And they got to fight the Borg on the Enterprise, which is kind of like Khan in Star Trek 2 yet again, but with the Borg Queen, who's gone to engineering to mess with it. And it's kind of like Khan again, but Khan is on the ship as the Borg Queen. And so we have that. And then we have down on the planet, Zefram Cochrane is kind of a drunk while they're doing goofy things on the planet. We have Lily Sloan get back up to the ship. This girl, Picard, to help fight the Borg, even though she doesn't know anything about that because she's from the 2063. They do a holodeck fight Borg scene. There's Picard's very angry and acting like he is already playing Moby Dick from his play that he was doing at the time. They did this a lot with Next Generation. There was an episode of Next Generation that came out right when a Sherlock Holmes movie was coming out. They did a couple of those. They did a Sherlock Holmes episode. There was a Robin Hood movie that was going to come out. They did a Robin Hood episode around the same time. Because you can always plan ahead. When they did this particular Next Generation run, they knew shows were coming out. It was a show slate. It took about 8 days to do the whole thing. Script to screen, story. The script was written in like 2 days. Filmed the story for like three or 4 days. Post-production was 2 days, 2.5 days. And then you're done with your episode, your early episode. That was it. And they usually did a bunch of them in a block. So they had like fall. They'd be like, okay, before the November sweeps, we're going to do this many episodes. Then after the November sweeps for January, and then on, we're going to do January to March or April. We're going to do a bunch of episodes there. And we're going to do 26 episodes a season. That's what they did back then. Now they only do about 10 episodes a season. And they should have enough time to fix some of those later ones. Just saying. So, yeah. Star Trek First Contact. Star Trek First Contact also features a scene where Borg Queen tries to seduce Data, but he's really actually working for the good guys. There's the Phoenix is launched, but because the crew were killed on the ship, except for the main guy, the Phoenix crew, the Riker and crew have to assume the command of the ship and do the warp test. Okay. And then, they do the warp test, and Data turns on the Borg Queen. They stop they break the warp core thing, which somehow doesn't blow up the ship. They break part of the warp core. Spills the coolant into the Borg Queen, kills her, and that turns off the drones. But earlier there's a scene where Worf and Picard and them sabotage the deflector dish. Oh, they're off sabotaging the deflector dish while the Queen is getting messed up. So that they can... That's right. Yeah. So they're going to turn her off as she activates the... Yeah, that's right. That's right. So they went out to the deflector dish to mess with it. They blow it off. Which, how'd they get they must have found a way to bring the deflector dish back enough to get back to the future. I don't know how they did that. But don't ask. I don't know. And then they defeat the Queen with the energy. That's right. Yeah, the order is a little fuzzy after all these years since 1996. It's now 2026. But yes, 1996. So it would have been in the middle of 3 years into Deep Space Nine and a year into Voyager. It would have been, yeah. So a little bit into the Dominion War, but not quite. Yeah, just a little bit. And it was the new uniforms, which they later adopted on Deep Space Nine. As in the episode Rapture, Deep Space Nine. And it wasn't long before they showed the episode The Ship, which was loosely based on our fan film story, Fearful Symmetry. Yeah, there were some lines from our story in that. Yes, there was the female Vortis speech is literally out of that script. They used it. They liked the speech, but not the rest of it. That's fine. That's cool. There was a later Voyager one, Tuvok, that they didn't use much of at all, really. They kind of did in the Picard show. They had evil Tuvok. Kind of, a little bit. But they probably were just thinking, oh yeah, changeling Tuvok. They was just being played by someone else, it's fine. But yeah, our fan stuff got in there. Because there was a writing contest between 1994 and 98. So yeah, we were involved at that point, the writing contest. And because there was a writer's strike in the late 80s, so they were accepting some fan submissions back then. They stopped by the time of the late in the Voyager, so 99. They stopped by 99, 2000. They weren't doing those anymore. But yeah, the fan story, Fearful Symmetry, and The Arbiter later became Starship Locations episodes and were rewritten for the modern era a couple of years ago. They aired on that show. But yes, pretty similar. So here was First Contact. And I can't believe I skipped over it in the other thing, but when you watch this video, it won't be skipped over. You can go and put this segment in there, and it'll be fine. First Contact. Good episode, even though it was kind of Wrath of Khan again. They just can't get away with it. They're too much. Yeah. But Borg Queen became infamous Borg Queen. Later, the role was recast by other people other than Alice Creech. But sometimes it was Alice Creech. I believe they brought her back for Picard season 3 in heavy makeup. Yeah. But yeah, that would be another show to describe that. I think we already did reviews of all the Picard stuff. I think we did. Pretty sure. Yeah. But yeah, we weren't doing the movies. We didn't. That's weird. Anyway, so this is the first of up to 8, and then I'm gonna go on to Insurrection in 1998, 2 years later. And that one was a little weird. But yeah, I kind of liked it. Kal Kat was dating someone at the time, and she liked it too. But yes. But yeah. Yeah. So I'm done with the Borg one. It inspired a bunch of other stuff, though. It inspired most of Voyager's Borg stuff, for which they kind of neutered them. It inspired most of Voyager, actually. 7 of 9, who came later, Queens, inspired a bunch of that. And all of Picard season 2 and 3, really inspired by that. But the movie, it had a great influence on all the other stuff. A lot of the other stuff. From the Berman and Braga era. Berman and Braga took over for Roddenberry roughly around 89, 90 or so. Next Generation was one of their things in the 80s, 87 and on. There were TV shows from 87 all the way until 2005 in that original era. 18 more years of Star Trek on TV, far surpassing anything at the time Star Wars would have done. Star Wars still hasn't caught up. Star Trek has done a bunch of other stuff since then. They haven't caught up, not even close. Anyway, so we're going to go on to Insurrection. I'm going to put all that together. Yeah, we got time. Okay, Star Trek. Okay. We get to movie 8. Next Generation's Insurrection. By then, they were well aware of Starship Locations. They were well aware of the 30th anniversary stuff we did, San Jose State. And yes, they were well aware of the burgeoning brand new First Press group. And they were also aware of hacky sack and its influence on pop culture at the time. They were aware of mental beings and planets with a kind of a fountain of youth kind of thing. Let's explore teen spirit. Let's do something like the reality TV and stuff. It wasn't just us, but it was a lot of us. College years, into the college years. I was just in college forever. So that's what, class of '98, as I state. And so Star Trek Insurrection. And we have Star Trek 2, about a con guy. We have, for keeping track, we have Star Trek 3 kind of had a Krugy sort of con-light guy. We had Star Trek 5, which had another one, a Zealot kind of con guy. We had Star Trek 6, 2 con guys doing different things. We had Star Trek 7, 2 con ladies. A lot of cons. Stop doing con. Enough with the con. Oh, let's do another one with... Really? Villains? Really? Again? Okay, that's the main problem. Also, what's funny about this movie is some of it is a spec script from Kal Kat and the Kal Kat. He totally is. Insurrection is a next generation silly Trek movie. It has Data acting goofy and stuff down on the planet. It has like goofy stuff going on. They go to this planet. They're doing like the duck blind thing. And there's an evil admiral who wants to steal the villagers away. Because the planet has healing properties. Makes you act younger. And it's like, why don't they just share the planet? It's a planet. And I didn't hate this movie. I thought it was a pretty good Next Generation movie. It had pretty good elements. So you have Riker shave his beard and fight some bad guys in a nebula. You've got 2 con-like bad guys that are really obvious, and you got an evil admiral. So you got 2 cons. Evil admiral and the Sona and the Burna. It's the end of the Dominion War, so you got that. It's like 1998. The Dominion War has been over for like 2.5 years, since 2376. Deep Space Nine is over at this point. It's 1998. Deep Space Nine is almost over. Yeah, so they got another year. Deep Space Nine will be over in 99. Okay. So it's not over yet. It's during the Dominion War, but they're pretending like it's afterward. So it's 1998, 1999 in that universe, so it's 2375, roughly. So it's the end of the... So Riker should have said not during the Dominion War. He should have said the Dominion War is happening right now, and these guys were used as this. He should have said that, because, yeah, that would have made more sense. But that's okay. Okay, the Dominion War was still going on. He should have said that. Yeah, it was still a thing, but the Enterprise E, the new ship, which was a... Okay, the rest of Insurrection, there's these bad guys, threatening people, 1998. The Dominion War is indeed supposed to be over, or nearly over. There's a lot of adventures going on, stuff like that. And they're on this planet. They're trying to stop the aliens from doing their thing. Yeah, it's the aliens. The Enterprise E, there's a joke about Worf having a pimple. There's a joke about Deanna Troy's boobs. There's weird jokes in the movie that don't really work. But the hacky sack scene, oh man, I just lost it. That was great. That just do that for like 5 minutes. That was awesome. But yeah, there were 2 different versions of the final scene. Bad guy fighting on the space station. And they had one where he de-ages and goes... They have another one where he explodes. They just went with the exploding one. Makes more sense. The evil admiral guy gets screwed in the plastic surgery device. Yeah, that's in there. And yeah, they were trying to make a holographic ship to put the heroes on, similar to the holographic ship from the hologram scene from Worf's half-brother on the planet. Now, one episode of TNG. It's a reference to that. And that is, Insurrection, which had a con in it. Yep, you almost forgot. You almost forgot Star Trek The Next Generation movie. Borg's in it. We thought of that in the 80s, by the way. Or the Next Generation did, really. Of course, we were probably thinking of the same thing that was. Probably thinking of Terminator movie. That's probably what it was. Except they were kind of like, yeah, they were kind of like the Borg in First Contact. They were more, they grab you and zap you with something, corrode you. It's more like that other kind. So they sort of combined them. Then they're like changelings or something. Yeah. Kind of weird. Anyway, so here we are. I guess I'm supposed to do the next 4 movies. Even though I think we've done the Abrams movies before. So it won't be as extensive a review for them. Yeah. So the next Generation movie was in 2002. So it was after Deep Space Nine and after Voyager. So then it referenced the Dominion War as well. It was 2002. It was set in 2379. And it's called Star Trek Nemesis. And yet again, Khan. They was trying to do Khan again. Stop with the Khan stuff. This time, though, they thought, let's look back to that Next Generation episode where the Ferengi was trying to trick them with a Picard clone son, and let's have a Picard clone instead. And he'll be the Khan. Opening scene is Admiral Janeway. Somehow she's got to be an admiral. Gives Picard marching orders to go to Romulus, the planet Romulus, because apparently the Romulan Senate has been killed off by a Riemann commander guy. But you'd think they would immediately assassinate him, but apparently he has a big, powerful super Khan ship thing, similar to the ship from the other story with the Suliban, not the Suliban, the other guys before. Now at this point, Star Trek Enterprise was on the air. It was a prequel series set in 2151. So at this point, that had been on for a year and a half, and also the 9/11 had happened in September 2001. So there's all this other goofy stuff going on. It had nothing to do with Star Trek, really, except they called the alien bad guys in that the Suliban, kind of reminiscent of another group. And the temporal Cold War was going on, so it was a prequel, yet it had sequel elements. The Borg show up at one point, but it's like just cybernetic bad guys. They don't call them that. Even though calling them the cyborg is pretty obvious what they are. But yes, transhumans, but not transsexual humans, unnecessarily. But yes. But yeah, and so in this one, it's the Romulans and the Remans. They mentioned the Remans. I think that's where you got the thing about the Dominion War and the Reman. That was the Reman scene. That was from this movie. That was from Nemesis, Star Trek Nemesis. Yeah, and they used that weird font that they got from early Photoshop from 2002. They just used it. I think that's called Gothic Sands or something. Something like that. Yeah, that's weird. Why are we using that font? Yeah, and the music was a little bit of Goldsmith, but a little bit of his son. Yeah, it was. So the Romulan clone is threatening the Enterprise E, and then they go into a nebula, and Stuart Baird was directing this, by the way. The guy directed Executive Decision, and some other movies. It opens with a wedding of Riker and Troy, and the classic scene of the classic scene of the Romulan ale should be illegal. Unfortunately, it is. That's a reference to Star Trek II, in which illegal Romulan ale was smuggled to Kirk on his birthday. See, the Wrath of Khan, back in the day. The reason the Wrath of Khan doesn't work as a prequel story where you decide, okay, that is because Kirk is supposed to be in his mid-50s and he's having a midlife crisis. In Star Trek II, he's supposed to be in his 50s. He can't suddenly be young 30-something Kirk because he's now fighting a bad guy that he met 15 years earlier. It doesn't make sense. So that's why it doesn't work. You can't do that, which will come up later. So in this version, yeah, Riker marries Troy. Anyway, presume they have kids because they're referencing Picard, but as our Silly Trek fan film maintained, no, they didn't have kids. They had them built from the synth planet, and they kind of went there with that because in Picard season 2, when they introduced the kids, they say that Thaddeus Riker died of a silicon ailment. How would a human have a silicon ailment? He's got to be a silicon creature or something, a robot. He's an android, and so is Castor. They're both robots, and they just age like humans. They're both robots. Yeah. So, it's the case in the fan film. So we fixed it. We fixed it. Now Nemesis though. Nemesis, you have, the fight between the two of them. The Nebula scene is basically Star Trek 2 all over again. And they had a bunch of cut scenes, including one in the wedding scene where Will Wheaton's character, Wesley Crusher, was going to show up. Say that he was back from the Traveler planet. He's going to be in that. They should have left that in. There was also a nice character development scene with Picard and Data discussing the nature of the passage of time, very similar to the one in Star Trek 2. But this time it was over a bottle of Chateau Picard. Much better than, it works for them in that scene. That should have been in there. There's one where Worf has to be a cat person. That was kind of funny. There's Data does the Spock thing, sacrifices himself to destroy the bad guy's ship at the end. So yeah, it's Star Trek 2 all over again, but Next Generation style. And it's the weakest one so far. It's the weakest film so far in the series, and it had to be the last Next Generation movie that they ever did. And it is so weak, in fact, they had to do a Star Trek Picard show, but didn't really. Yeah, and now it's just, we've already been over Picard, so we're not doing that. But so we already did. But we didn't do the movies. Nemesis had issues. It had a lot of influence by Patrick Stewart. Unfortunately, adding a bunch of goofy stuff that didn't really make sense. We have a young Tom Hardy in it, who looks a lot like one of my nephews. And he said, yeah, that guy does look like me. It's weird. Oh, you mean he actually said, oh yeah, like the guy from you mean the guy from the Venom movies? You say, yeah, that guy. Yeah, got it down. The Venom movies, yeah. He's in those now. But yeah, I just say Tobey Maguire. I meant Tom Hardy. Tom Hardy. That's what Tom Hardy. Yeah. So he's playing Picard's clone. They don't really look that much alike. There's some issues involving how that would even work. But we've been over that kind of stuff before, so it kind of doesn't. Parts of it that action kind of work. Now, when they did this movie, they made the set slightly smaller because they had less time, I guess. But they did make the bridge on a gimbal. They put a big gimbal. They rebuilt the bridge on this, so the floor would actually move around a little bit, and it caused some problems. They were doing, but other than that, it was fine. The action scenes were very actiony, and it doesn't help that also there was a sort of director Stuart Baird shouldn't be allowed to do Star Trek movies, isn't it? There's Insurrection, Nemesis. Nemesis wasn't that great. It was one of the lesser ones. It was the end of the Next Generation movies forever, and kind of the reboot of the whole thing happened later. Now, that's my take on it. Not that great a movie. No. Anyway, so the next one and partly the reason is all those cutscenes should have been included, because the wine scene and the other scene and the scenes there was one from the trailer too, as well, because an extreme caution that's in there. Some of the stuff one of the dumbest scenes that's added in there was added by Patrick Stewart, when he's like, let's have a buggy chase scene. And let's have like a ship chase, flying the ship through the Romulan ship scene. How did that either of those even work? I was like neither of those scenes work. It doesn't work. Don't do that. That was dumb. Buggy chase, except I like dune buggies. Okay. And they had a copy of Data too. They had a clone of Data called B4. Who was now there's a Kal Kat version of this movie that no one will ever see, but I will tell you about it. The Kal Kat version re-adds in, like some fans have done, those cutscenes from the movie into the movie, puts them all back, and then changes the ending slightly, so that after Dr. Crusher leaves, in that one scene they cut out as well, she's going to leave, they immediately cut back to the Captain Admiral Janeway going, "You need to go back to Romulus," and then cut back to like them appearing in the courtroom thing, but cutting it so that it looks like Data is just there in the courtroom, and he's like, "Oh, hello, Captain," indicating that Data wasn't killed; he's still there. And B4 is the one that blew up, apparently. And then we cut to the other scene that they deleted, which was the other, because the other ending where they introduce the new first officer. Riker leaves to go on be on the Titan, and then there's a fan that made the Titan, and then they do the Titan books from then on. When long before Star Trek Online started, a little after that. But yeah, now those Star Trek Online guys have left, so we have no connection to Star Trek Online anymore. From 2010 on to later on, until probably before Picard season 2. That's when he left. The guys from that left. So Picard season 2, even though we had some Star Trek Online ships in there, it wasn't part of that. but yeah. So yeah, we have that was one. So the next movie in the collection is 5 years later, Star Trek 2009. They wanted to do an origin story remake thing. They're still talking about origin stories. No, we shouldn't do that. Origin of a crew, yes, but not the Enterprise. Not Kirk and Spock and McCoy. But apparently J.J. Abrams decided, I'm going to make Star Trek seem more like Star Wars. And do a movie that was slick and easy and fun. But was still kind of Star Trek 2. There's a main villain in there. There's a hero, the main villain called Nero, the Romulan villain. And he comes through space-time from Picard's era, from Next Generation, being followed by old Spock. And apparently there's been a supernova, exploded in 2387, destroyed the Star Trek universe, basically. Obliterate the Star Trek universe. Big supernova, apparently, destroyed the whole galaxy. Well, it apparently didn't destroy the galaxy, but they're acting like it did. But that doesn't really make any sense, but sure, a star explodes again. Gee, they've done that before, haven't they? It's called the Generations. So we have, it's very goofy. So, yeah. It's called Star Trek '09 or Star Trek. I want to just erase the other universe, which ticked off some of the fans. They made Kirk and crew fresh out of the academy. They go to Pike's ship, and somehow he's instantly almost the commander of the ship. That is not what happened. Kirk was on the Farragut for many years before being in the academy. They fixed that in Strange New Worlds a little bit. The newer show, which was also a prequel, but that was after Discovery, which was also a prequel. And there, they made Kirk too old. The Kirk that's on the new show is too old. It's just a little, he's 5 years too old. They made him too young, and then they made him too old. So we got a new Kirk and crew. We got Spock's with a Uhura for some reason. Never was in the other story. Zoe Saldana, who will later be on Avatar movies, same year. But yeah, it did have the remitting quality of showing the Kobayashi Maru test as a sort of a gag, and of course it also had Kirk stealing a Corvette as a child, because that had to be in there. I don't know how they got that. And it did have a type of technology think it'd still be useful today, as Amanda Stoner pointed out upon seeing it. Yes, it did in fact have a roll of duct tape on the set in the movie, on the bridge next to Sulu. Just a roll of duct tapes in there. I'm afraid that Kitty Key Kal Kat was probably on the set that day and put it there. You put it there, didn't you? But yes. Anyway, so yeah, yeah, well, all three of those in some way or another. And yeah, so Abrams knows. Yeah, Abrams is an ex-Pine Hill student. Him and the Sprinsky and the others worked on other creative stuff, but he was a Pine Hill student ahead of us. Kind of seems like it. But yeah. So of course he'd heard about the tossing the apple scene out of the backpack. So in the Kobayashi Maru scene, he'd seen the star crackers. He'd seen it. He'd seen an early video of it before it was out on YouTube. It was an early video of it by 2009. Yeah, could have seen it. The video version, they're on public access. And so Kirk reaches into his backpack, does exactly what Mark's Cards did in that Star Crackers movie. Same scene. Verbatim, chomp. Doop, 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 chomp. Oh my God. Woo! Laugh at. My Kal Kat brother and him was watching. I was there too, of course. And then Robert gets up. It's like, I'm going to sit over there. I'm having too much fun watching this. Oh, what it was. Yeah, there was some fun stuff in there, even though it was kind of stupid. It was kind of a Wrath of Khan ripoff. Yeah, Star Trek '09. We have reviewed this one before, but not very well. Yeah, it had all the slick nature of a movie. The premise was that Nero was going to use a red matter device, black hole maker, to destroy Vulcan, which he does, which would instantly wreck the canon and no longer make the series moot. But they already did a supernova of the Romulan sun, so why not? And then immediately mess with canon and screw everything up. Then they're going to do it for Earth, but of course they're not going to destroy Earth. It's going to do it to the mining device on Earth as well. Sulu has sword play at one point on the scaffold, and we saw them make that scene, the scaffold. Yeah, that was cool. We saw the sword fight scene. So the sword fight scene, the bridge scene, and before they actually finished them, and we saw there was another scene where they were on some kind of a. Was that the next one? That was the next one. It was the next one. Yeah, the con one we were more and more involved in that one. Unfortunately. Yes. And they were trying to do Starfleet Academy again there with that story. Because they were kind of cadets barely out of the academy and they're suddenly captains. Like way earlier than they should be in the 2250s. Way earlier than any of that should have happened. And the other stuff was new. Fan stuff was new, so they weren't paying attention to it. And then they went to bury it. Yeah. But yeah, I was about to reference some fan stuff, but it shouldn't because it doesn't have anything to do with them. Now that's Discovery. That's later. But yeah, here it was. There it is. And why it doesn't work? Because it doesn't work. It's a different timeline. They should say it's a different universe and timeline. And should have had it not be Kirk and Spock. If it was just some other crew, it would have been fine. Okay, they're upstart. He went on to do Star Trek movies, Star Wars movies after that. Oh boy. Then comes the movie that divided the fans even more divisive. Like I said before, Space Seed is set when Kirk is in his 30s. Wrath of Khan is almost 20 years later. They tried to do Wrath of Khan with Space Seed. Next movie, Star Trek Into Darkness, which title doesn't make any sense. Mark's Cards and Kal Kat reviewed it extensively on their website channel. It's one of the most popular videos of that time period on the channel as well. We don't need to go into all that. But what they did is they got Benedict Cumberbatch to come along and play Khan, which makes him even more white than having Ricardo Montalban play him. make any sense. Sure. Okay, and our claim to fame on that one was that we saw 2 scenes that we got to see. The internet was new, you get to see scenes. And so at this point, we saw this weird green screen scene they were filming. We also saw some of the Transformer movies as well. So Paramount, we got to scroll around. So we have Paramount scene, we got to see the fake Paramount Chicago in that Chicago Transformers movie. And what they were doing there. We got to see the other stuff that they were doing over there. When they were doing the one where they went to Chicago and the Transformers. I think it was the third one. Dark of the Moon. Not Dark of the Moon. I think that's what it was. The second one and the third one. We got to see. The second one as well, where they jumped through Arabia using some of Vegas as the pyramids, even though it's obviously the Vegas one. And some other stuff. And then the other planet. But that's another movie. The Transformer movies. I'm not sure I'll review those. Oh, no, yeah. But yeah, in this one, let's stick to this one. Let's stick to that. So we have this barge scene. Spock is fighting this tall guy barge, going back and forth. What the hell are you guys filming? Oh, this is the fight scene between Spock and Khan. Fight scene? They never went to blows with each other. What? No, just go with it. What? And there was this other scene where there were supposed to be a bunch of cadets in a cadet thing. It's supposed to be like a post-cadet-y thing, academy kind of thing going on. And there's like a crowd doing their thing. There's a cadet scene. It's fighting Khan? Really? It's going to be Khan? You're going to do Khan? JJ, no, don't do Khan. They've done Khan a bunch of times. Don't do him anymore. No, we're going to do Khan. I suppose in the future they'll bring back Palpatine. That'd be really dumb. No. Ooh, that's a good idea. See, he did go to Pine. Anyway, so, and everything. So yeah, definitely know that McMahon guy did. And San Jose State. So yeah, at least visiting. And so yeah, there was another scene on a war-torn planet. Turned out to be the Klingon homeworld. This weird-looking set with this broken-up wall. And they stole from the Nemesis that big broken wall that they were able to build. Well, so that was the 3 scenes that I recall from that. That was fun. But yeah, could have been cool. Could have worked. It just kind of didn't. Yeah, they kill off Pike at some point. I guess kind of kill off Pike. There's other fun references. There's stuff that happened in the first one that was fun, like Spock telling the Science Academy to go screw themselves, that kind of thing. But in this one, no, they were just trying to do Wrath of Khan, and they had him in a holding area briefly and some other stuff going on. And then they reverse the death scene. They have Kirk go to the engine room and do his stuff and then hurt himself. And they have Spock scream Khan, which made no sense. Because that completely... No, that's not subverting expectations, JJ. That's messing it up. Anyway, so yeah, so many things didn't work in that movie. Things just didn't work. And you could go on for a long time about that, but we've already done that. I just wanted to say that's my brief review. Yeah, it just didn't work. And then we come to 2016, to the next movie. 2016, that was 2013 for the Con one. 2016 was Star Trek Beyond, or Star Trek Beyond. Again, the title is weird. This time they got Simon Pegg to direct it. Jason Lynn, I was going to say Simon Pegg. And Pegg helped, but Jason Lynn directed it. The Fast and the Furious guy. Yeah, this one, the sets we got to see were Prometheus Station. It was all damaged, and there was like a ship thing, and Prometheus Station. What's that going to be? Well, Prometheus Station. Oh, and then there was another scene on the planet with the beehive people. That was kind of cool, and a bike going by, and I'm like, what's that? It's weird. And another scene in the it was like a chamber where there was like a black dude and the captain fighting. What was going on there? But but yeah, those are the three scenes. And there was another scene on an old ship. Yeah, and they're gonna like do some scenes on the old ship, and they had this old text on the wall. And we saw those four scenes. Keep getting to see scenes from the movie as it was being made. Not so much anymore, but yeah. Although during the Picard show they did give a few hints, especially in season 2. Yeah, now that one we're like, yeah, you guys are filming over there. Wonder what they're doing. But anyway, here we had this other thing, and yeah. Now, that one was different though. That one was like, okay, yeah, that one was different. So here we have the thing, and Star Trek Beyond. And this one, it's supposed to be after the 5-year mission is over. Kirk and crew are a little older, and they go on a space mission to this planet, where they're attacked by an alien group that has the ability to wreck the ship. They keep wrecking the ship. They've wrecked it a couple times. Wrecked the ship and crashed the saucer section of the planet. So it's Generations again. It's Wrath of Khan again, but it's a different Khan. It's an evil captain. So it's Insurrection again. It's very derivative of the other movies. And the bad guy has like killer attack bee drones. Because of bees. There's also an alien lady on the planet, the alien lady who's escaped from the ship as a young person, who resembles Gwendola from the other show. It's probably it's a Solon, a Solonite. Yes, Solon person. She's a Solon. So there was one of those back in Beyond. Yeah, that's cool. So there was one back there. Yeah, so Gwendola. Not really, but kind of acted like her. It's kind of what they were thinking, I think. But yeah, you have. It was a little better as a movie. It wasn't bad. It was a little better. It worked. They had this really spectacular space station. They made a joke about it breaking at some point. But they did break part of it. They crashed a ship into it. The crashed ship, it turned out, was the older ship, which they get off the planet trying to get away from the con guy. And he goes up to the station. And there's sort of like an incident with this planet where they got to go back to the station. And there's not so much a fight in a nebula as a fight in the workings and mechanisms of the station. Okay. There's a lot of... The Enterprise was destroyed though, so at the end they build a new one in that weird flash forward sequence. It becomes the Enterprise A, but that was a fan design, and I don't think they're going to use it in future ones because they've canceled the Abrams movies as of 2025, so we're not going to do any more of those. They just decided no. They also took our advice and said, well, maybe that origin story is not such a good idea to do again. You think? You've already done it 4 times. In some form or another on different shows. Don't do it anymore. Oh. Anyway. Yeah. So that is movie 12, I believe. Yeah. Is it 12 or 11? Let's see. Let me see here. We got 10, which was like, yeah, 10. We have now yeah. Trek 13 was technically Beyond. I've skipped ahead to 13. I haven't skipped though. I've jumped ahead. I've done Star Trek Beyond. All right. So the 3 Abrams movies were 09 and 2012 and 2016. So 2013 and 2016. Those were. Yeah, because Nemesis would have been Star Trek 10, so 11, 12, and 13. All right, I'm at 13. And kind of done. But as an extra bonus, I will throw in my review of Star Trek Section 31, the TV movie, which I'm sure you already did a review of. But in Section 31, it's set in 2324. It's set in the Discovery timeline. It should have been set entirely in the Terran Empire. And there's this evil lady. She sounds like Space Hitler. It's a con type of lady. But in this time, it's to subvert expectations, and she's the main character. She meets up with these other roguish people. And for some reason, they include Rachel Garrett. They didn't need to. But it's because it's obviously like a roguish thing anyway. And they try to do Guardians of the Galaxy with spy people. And it really doesn't work. And they go on an adventure. Section 31 is the 13th movie? Or, yeah, 14th movie. It's 14th movie. It's Star Trek 4, pretty much, of the Abrams timeline. And it was not good. It was the worst one of them, all of them. Even pushing out Star Trek 5 is the worst one. It has, wow. It's pretty, and it's not because it's like woke or something. No, it's just not very good. Yeah, she's got a secret weapon she's got to get from a bad guy. The bad guy shouldn't be there in her timeline. She came from another timeline in the future. She came back in time. Why would he be the same age that she was when he last saw her? He wouldn't be. He'd be 80 years older. Doesn't make any sense. They're in the 2324. They're not in 2257 anymore, or where she came from, and then went into the future to 3290, and then came back. It's very confusing. It would only make sense if she's from 2024 the whole time. Yeah, like a silly Trek. So yeah, they're doing a lot of silly Trek in there. Strange New Worlds, Discovery, then Strange New Worlds, then Academy came out in that timeline. And yeah, so Strange New Worlds is still in the 2260s, so early 2260s. If they want to, they can do a Strange New Worlds movie. I don't think they're going to. I think they're doing season 4 there. I was privy to the season 3 when they showed the bar. They showed their little bar room they set up to all cool and stuff. And Will Wheaton's in there, and he's all, I want to take that bottle of Romulan ale from you, or bottle of a Regillian alien bottle. I don't know if he did, but hopefully not. But yeah, and some other stuff on the bridge set, crashed bridge set, crashed other ship set, stuff like that from Strange New Worlds. But yeah, as for Academy, we weren't involved in that. Well, really, should have been. But we did sneakily include some stuff though. Nestifer. Yeah. Anyway, so Section 31 ends with them having a space battle thing where they're fighting, using a garbage scow to fight some bad guys, get the secret weapon, go to the end, which marks cards, and Kal Kat's thought of, you know what that should be at the end of that stupid secret weapon thing. It's going to destroy the galaxy or whatever. She should say, oh no, it really won't do that. It was a toy. Yeah, it was like a cat toy. Useless. I couldn't build a universe-destroying weapon. That's stupid. I just told all you guys that. It isn't really. It just makes a big boom noise and it's gone. Yeah. Anyway, so this is Clint Cowpoke, having finished off 13 Star Trek movies. Or yeah, I finished off, I read 5 of them. He did the rest. This is fun. Yeah, we didn't do the movies. Didn't do rundown of the movies until now. So, yeah, as they close off the studio, all the other set stuff's gone, packaged up into boxes. Well, it's not gone. It's packaged. Yeah. So let's just do a bunch of shooting the shit stuff. That's just Star Trek and record it. I'll also continue to review Star Trek Academy, and so that's it until it's over. And that's probably, actually, yeah, when we get to the end of Starfleet Academy, that'll probably be the last recorded video in the area. Be gone after that. So, yeah. Shame we gotta end on that. But Academy's not bad. It's just, there's a lot of hate over it because they don't like the elements of it, but we kind of do because it's basically silly Trek. Yeah, it doesn't have Tommy Newson in it. Oh, Tommy Newson, you weren't in Starfleet Academy when Wesley was. And Nick Locarno and Cito, he couldn't have been. He would have been 10. 8 to 10 years old. Couldn't have met him. Anyway, so, yep. Well, I'm going to get a move on now. I'm going to mosey on. Who the hell is Mosey?